This tells you how tired I am, as I forgot to do the starting scene. Whatever. We're gonna just launch into it. Welcome to a little bit of R&R with Russ and Rob. Happy to. I had a migraine last night. Went to bed. My brain went, well, this is a nap. So then I was wide awake for like 4 hours and had to take melatonin. So I'm all over the place. How are we doing, Rob?
Well, I got a good night's sleep, unfortunately, compared to you. Yeah, we're doing all right. Baby's asleep.
It happens. Yeah, for now.
So,
Like, let's hope that continues because it's almost like radar. If we take too long, he's gonna be like, Dad, hello.
yep. Yep. Once I start something, he's like, all right, let's wake up.
Yeah, but today we're gonna be going over. And did you watch any of the games? Because boy, was it a weird weekend.
The only game I didn't watch was Buffalo, and that's because we were doing stuff with Peyton. Did we bathe? I forget
You
what we were
didn't
doing
miss
at
anything.
4:30, but yeah, I didn't watch that game. The Chiefs, they looked way better than what they've looked like. Obviously, the Dolphins suck against anyone who's good, so that
Well, and
makes it look different.
I love that you brought that up first because I have a good buddy who's a Dolphins fan, and I wanted to root for them. I wanted to root for them so bad. But they're coming in off an 0-2 losing streak against good teams and not being competitive. They actually, ironically, kind of looked like the Eagles. And then you had Dallas, who also wasn't good against good teams. So are we really surprised they went home? Because I only one I was surprised by was Houston because I wasn't expecting them as a rookie team to look so good. But Dallas had been bad all year against good teams. Miami had been bad all year against good teams. Up to that game, I think Eagles were 1-5 and just got blown up by the Giants. So
Yeah, their last six, they were horrible.
I mean, is any of that really that? The only surprising game, and in a good way, was Lions Rams being so close. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
That
Oh, I
was a
forgot that was
competitive
a
game.
close game. That was a really good game.
Yes.
I missed part of that though. I think we're bathing him or something, so I missed part of it.
I
But
don't remember if I saw the whole thing, but I
yeah,
enjoyed it. I was impressed.
yeah,
But
yeah. One and both teams scored in like the first five possessions, and then the second half, neither of them could do a darn thing.
yeah, it was. Well, actually, in a weird way, it reminds me a little bit because you said you didn't see Buffalo Pittsburgh. I watched it just because I was curious, but Buffalo was up like 20-0 or 20-7. Pittsburgh blocks a punt and then kind of made it a game, but I mean they were within
Yeah.
7, but I don't know. And it's one of those weird ones where there are certain people who are going to say, man, people are not going to be impressed with Kansas City, Miami, but are going to be so up, over the moon about Buffalo. And it's like, well, Miami hasn't looked good. Kansas City's looked okay, so I guess you can kind of be impressed. They looked a little bit better, but Buffalo, outside of Kansas City, has struggled in the. I mean, they were close with Kansas City, obviously lost, but have been okay in the playoffs. So I don't know. What do you think? Is it more impressive that Buffalo did what they were supposed to do, or Kansas City beating Miami? Because I don't think that was that impressive.
Well, I think just winning in the playoffs, as we saw with Dallas losing to the youngest team in 50 years
Yeah,
to make
and
the
badly,
playoffs,
not even competitive.
and badly. I think just winning, you have to get credit.
Sure.
And it was, I mean, I don't know if you consider Mason Rudolph a starter because technically it was Pickett and then it was Trubisky. And so technically he's a third stringer, which they faced as a third stringer in Skylar Thompson for the Dolphins last year and
Right.
barely beat him. So I think what they're figuring out, which is what the Chiefs have figured out, is you don't have to win pretty. You don't have to put up
Sure.
35 and it be a back and forth game. You can just suffocate the other team. Because that's
Kansas
one of
City's
the
defense
points.
is good.
That's one of the points for the Chiefs is like
Yes.
we think they suck, and it's like no, they score 25 and they keep you to 17.
Well, and they only
That's how you
suck
win.
because their receivers
It's-
can't catch. If their receivers were normal,
Right.
we wouldn't be having
Well-
this conversation.
Well, I think it's actually worse that their tackles aren't as good as they need to be.
True.
A lot of penalties, a lot of other stuff. But I had actually, just as a side note, I had seen something on, and I still haven't watched all of it, but it was on YouTube of a guy doing a breakdown of why all these guys are having trouble scoring in the red zone and just why offenses have
I think I
looked
see all the same
worse.
thing.
It's like a 12-minute thing
Yeah, that
where
video is
he's saying
great.
how they're changing the coverage and stuff. So it
Yes.
makes sense why, because it's funny that defense doesn't play better. Obviously, if you have the a bad call in from the coordinator,
Hmm.
based on what he's thinking the offense does, and the offense does something different or
Right,
sees what
right,
they're doing, then it looks bad. But like you know, essentially the reads for the most part
right.
that you're going to be giving the quarterback because that's the quarterback reads the defense. So based on if you give them a certain look, he's going to have this play in a certain read. So I'm not that I'm smart enough to develop this, but I'm surprised the defense has been so behind in that sense because
That's a
there
good point.
so you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
how are so many of the coordinators not realizing, for example, that video he's talking about if there's a crosser, there's going to be another crosser because you're
Yes.
trying to get a linebacker to scooch this way and then the guy comes behind him or whatever safety depending
Yeah, yeah.
the
I get
whole
what you're
thing.
saying.
We should honestly just link that guy's video because it's awesome. But
I probably will
there's
because
there's rules to offense
yeah,
as there's rules to defense, but it's as if the defense is playing like the offense can do whatever it wants, and
right.
it has certain things that like a tight end goes in motion and sits a certain spot. He's either trying to seal the end if you're running, right? The D end they're trying to stretch on the outside of the tight end, or he's going to wham back inside. Like there's only so many things that guy can
Right.
legitimately do, And we're like, oh wow, how'd they do that? And it's like literally everyone does that. How are you not? How are you
Well,
not seeing some of that happen?
well, I think it's because the NFL is so slow to change, right? I mean, Tampa 2 was the defense for the longest time.
Right?
And then this exact defense, I don't remember who said it, but it was actually extremely unpopular about 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
it was the guy who, I think it's Fangio, is the one who kind of invented it.
Yeah.
He kept
Yeah.
getting bounced around. So, and actually, ironically, the coordinator, he's not doing very good. The Niners wanted him.
Well, 40 of their sacks were on the bench.
No, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Sorry, and this is actually something that does frustrate me. We kind of had a brief discussion before we started about national media, and I get it. Part of it's an entertainment game, but there is this because I do want to even get into it a little bit, kind of how we talk about teams and MVPs, because we do this weird thing to me where we almost and I love defense. So when we overemphasize the quarterback, it's like, well, no, your offensive coordinator also had a good game, and your offensive line did what it's supposed to do, and it's not always. I mean, there are some miracle plays. Let's be honest. When Mahomes beat the Niners in the Super Bowl, he backed up 40 yards and threw it 40 yards. Like he's the only one who can do that play, and you need a couple of those to win Super Bowls. But to get there, to get your record, to get to the point where you can win a Super Bowl, your coordinator both of them have to be good. They have to have a good game plan. Belichick's won Super Bowls on third quarter adjustments, where they were okay in the first half and shuts them down in the second half. He's the master of that. So,
Or they were down 25 and come back and win.
well, and I'd love to discuss that because everybody's like, "Oh, that's all Shanahan's fault." Well, hilariously, that is Dan Quinn. Now, is it all Dan Quinn? Because I hate that too. Oh, it's just all the defense. Well, if the Niners get one first down against the Chiefs, they probably win the Super Bowl. So it's always both. It's what is your execution? Can you execute for a full 60 minutes? And that was what the Eagles were doing till they were 10-1. So it's a frustrating part of football that, and I used to be the worst at it. The overreaction, sky is falling. Jimmy G's a god. Jimmy G's the worst. Fire Shanahan, fire Wilkes, and I've had to realize, like, no.
Well, Jimmy
football's
G
so more
was the
complicated
worst.
than that. Jimmy G, but at least I
He
went
was
and
the
found
worst.
proof. I went and watched
Right.
film of, because I had an idea. I was like, gosh, he just doesn't. He never looks comfy. He always kind
Just
of looks
doesn't
a
make
little.
the big throw, man.
True.
That's the reason we want the real reason we lost the Super Bowl is because he couldn't throw it 25 yards into
True.
a guy's hands.
Well, but
Right, he
also-
threw it 40. He threw it 40.
I
He's
think,
like,
I think people forget they went touchdown, punt, 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 turnover on downs, interception. So, like, if you could get a couple of those to be more than a
just
minute
get a couple
long,
first downs.
yeah.
Golly.
That's what also people forget when
Yeah.
they're comparing Purdy and Jimmy G is actually where Purdy's really good. 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12. Like he's actually pretty hard to get off the field, and that's a big deal
Yeah.
as a QB.
Especially for the defense.
Right now, out of curiosity, because this is one I was so waiting to ask you, because again, I've never played, and I think even if you've played high school or whatever, it matters. I always wonder, how do you tell nerves versus lack of preparation? Because we didn't even talk the national championship game, and I keep hearing, well, Michigan dominated. And I'm like, man, Penix from the jump never looked comfortable and never looked like he settled in. But I don't know. Was that the defense making him uncomfortable? Was Dallas looking bad from the start? Because CD and Dak looked upset at each other from the moment the game started. So, and I know we're guessing, but how do you tell nerves versus lack of preparation? Because the veteran teams did not look prepared.
Yeah, some of that you wonder if the rookie guys are just like the young pups and they don't realize how bad they are or how good they are. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know.
The freshmen that come in, they're like, yeah, dude, we're gonna rock this team, and you're like, Utah State, no offense to them, I know they've been good, but they're playing Georgia, and you're like, well, you're gonna get your butts handed to you, so you might make one play of 8 yards, and you'll be like fired up, but they're gonna beat you 63-7. So some of that is maybe you don't know what you don't know, and then as a rookie, you might maybe just follow the game plan that you're supposed to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And with veterans, you might just allow more flexibility in what they're doing. Real
quick,
maybe
it's
you
funny
give
you say that. Is Purdy is famously quoted, I just throw it where Shanahan tells me to, which actually I think got him in a little bit of trouble because that's where I think some of his picks have come from, and he's learned of, I can't just throw it where Shanahan told me to throw it. Keep going.
Right. Yeah, the D line, it's like, hey, we're just going to stunt here because, Aaron Donald's like, I got a feeling, let's stunt.
Right.
Or, the Eagles had a bunch of veteran D lines. You just listen, But as a high schooler that played sports that, for basketball, I didn't get to play football. I would have been I don't think I'd have had near the nerves in football. Because offensively, I sucked in basketball.
Well,
if that's what we're talking about.
I agree with you because I think also at basketball it's a lot like golf. It's very mental. If your shot's not falling, that's a lot to overcome mentally. And I think it's similar to quarterbacks a little bit. I think it's why Dak kind of struggles in the playoffs is because it's a different atmosphere. There's more pressure. I think he feels it, and it's a little bit. Purdy's doing this too. Of when you start to press and you think, well, I have to make a play here, that's when you get a pick six. That's like Flacco threw him back to back because he could feel the tide turning and knew, well, we have to keep moving, but then you make the stupid play.
It's hard too because Flacco and Dak are completely opposite people.
True.
Dak doesn't throw interceptions. Last year he did it more than normal, but every other year he does not throw interceptions. Whereas Flacco, he's like, I'm throwing it. I don't care. But both instances can get you picks.
Yep.
Right? If you kind of hesitate and you don't let her rip, it's not going to have the velocity.
That was Penix.
You're not leading them
in the championship game.
Right. Whereas Flacco might just send that thing, and you're like, dude, you need to not send that thing. So, I think it is so player dependent because there's guys I doubt Dylan Courier will ever watch this, but if he happens to, he will know that I am his biggest fan. So he was the other captain on the team, and we were just like, if we needed a bucket, we would go 4 on the baseline, so corner, 2 on the block. One would go pick for him, and he would make something happen. If the corner came out, he would kick it to the corner. They would shoot it and drive, or he would pick and roll to a shot, pick and dump off pass. He just ran it. And if I ran that, maybe some of it is enough reps, right? He had done that enough in his life to be comfortable in that situation, enough times failing too. Because obviously he was a senior at that point. So he won as a freshman. I wasn't there. Then failed as a
I forgot about that.
Sophomore, junior, right? What wasn't quite good enough. And then as a senior, you now have that level. So, but with that said, right, we're talking rookie
Mm-hmm.
versus like veteran and nerves versus. So I think some of it very much just depends on the guy.
Sure.
Um, I think you can be prepared. Like for myself, if I'm speaking on myself, I can be prepared, but in the moment, you can absolutely forget what you're supposed to do. You absolutely can freeze for a second. You can hesitate. And when it comes to football, man, like defense, offense, special teams, you need all 11 guys on the field to do everything together, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
talked about, I don't know if we talked Jordan last week at all, but my best buddy Jordan was one of the guys I coached with. He said he would tell our linebacker, Hafiz, even if it's not what I called, you all have to run it. So he would tell Hafiz, if you don't get the call, just make sure everyone runs the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't have one corner thinking it's man, one corner thinking it's cover three. It's not going to work. Now, again, pros, you do that and you're fine, right? Because they've figured all that, one side's doing this, one side's doing that.
But
But
I
in
don't
high
know.
school,
When you watch, especially Dallas and the Eagles, just the bad eyes. It was like, guys, you know what the play call is, right? Because, like, to your point,
right,
they didn't all seem on the same page.
right. And then your coaches have to be on the same page. Your position coaches to the whatever coordinator they're assigned, offense or defense, because they got to be subbing the right guys in soon enough so that guy can get the play call. Because I'm sure I forget which game it was. Which one was last night?
Eagles, Bucks.
Eagles Bucks. I don't remember if it was the Bucks um, or the Eagles, either way. And I don't remember how the play ended up. Sometimes it doesn't matter. The line sucks and all the periphery guys don't matter. But one of the guys had subbed in late on defense and was like trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. I think the linebacker was like that or whatever. He gave him something. But yeah, if you're thinking it's man coverage and you're supposed to play deep, and that guy stays in the flat, well, you got another guy. Did you see the Julio play? That was a really good. So the I don't know if I'll be able to work. So the left outside the X ran like a quick stop, like I don't know if it's 5 or 7 yards, real quick, and then Julio came from the slot and did like a not really an out and up, but it was kind of a
Right.
fade type of deal, and Hurts put it right on him, but it like confused the triangle
Mm-hmm.
that of really the linebacker should have gotten the flat based on what I was looking at. The corner should have been deep.
That
Um,
happened to us a lot, actually. They that's
but
that where
the
you're getting the
linebacker
vertical
needed to get
stretch.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the linebacker didn't go with him. I don't know what they're running. I don't know who's at fault. Levante David. Oh, so it was yeah, it was I already said Julio Jones. So Levante David was on that side, and that guy's amazing.
Yes.
So I don't know if he got in the wrong spot. But all that to say about the nerves and stuff, one guy can forget his job and be completely wrong.
True.
And
Especially on
completely
defense. It
ruin the
only takes
entire
one
thing.
dude.
Right, a linebacker picking the wrong hole to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make one move on a safety and they're gone. Or like Niners like to run outside zone or stretch as they call
Right.
it. And if which means all the line goes one way, and then if they get a push, the running back cuts back up and through, or he just makes it around everybody, or he completely cuts back. Right? There's lots of
Mm-hmm.
options there. If one of the guys tries to one of the D linemen tries to stretch it quicker, right? Now there's this huge hole because when you run stretch, the defense is just trying to stay in their zone, right? In
Mm-hmm.
the alignment that they're supposed to have. It's just a moving alignment. And the moment that guy's like, I'm not in this gap anymore. I'm gonna go make the play. I'm the man.
Mm-hmm. The offensive
Mostert
line goes,
or
here, have fun.
McCaffrey's just
Go
like,
for it.
I'll take you where you want to go, sir. Wherever you want. And then you get a 20-yard play.
You
So
lead. I'll follow.
yeah, seriously. I mean, there's so many
Yep.
it's if you watch a screen, right? The tackle's like, "Oh, I suck. You're so good," and then he's like, "Oh, just kidding. I'm leaving." And they're like, "Dang it, man, you got me again."
Dallas
But
did that a
it's
lot.
yeah, yeah.
You know what's funny,
Well,
actually?
a lot of discipline.
I was gonna say because part of this is I'm way harder on coaches than players, and I don't know how you fall. Because to me, if it's one game, it's like okay, maybe someone prepared players. But if you keep showing the exact same problems over and over and over, and there was a great I bookmarked it on Twitter. The way Dallas, first of all, they were in nickel most of the game against Green Bay. You already can't stop the run. Why are you in nickel? Then they were so wide. I was literally looking like, you're just telling Green Bay, run right here. And both
right alignment is huge.
It's just like, guys, if you know, I get it. I the thought process, I understand this if you're Dan Quinn. Which is hilarious to me of, well, we can't really stop the run, so let's stay in nickel to prevent big plays. And then you leave a guy so wide open, there's not a defender in the picture. So go ahead.
I don't know if you had heard, that was the most open anyone's been all year.
Yes. Oh, it was horrendous.
17 yards. Yes. 17 yards was how open that person was. No one's been that open this entire year.
Which they
Carolina didn't leave someone that open. So with that, one, Leighton Vander Esch has been out. And
that's a huge deal.
Right. So I think they might be down both of their linebackers.
That sounds right.
But also,
because their linebackers struggled.
Pardon me. They are better at the edges for their pass rush. They're not like a big. I don't know if you saw the Tampa Vea. Is it Lodi Vea? Something like that? That dude is.
He is Vince Wilfork reincarnated.
Golly,
good God.
You just stick his feet in the ground, he ain't moving.
No, he's a big boy.
But they need a guy like that on obvious run downs because
they're undersized as a defense.
Tampa didn't get ran on at all.
No.
Not just by Dallas, but in general. They were really good.
We struggled.
So, with that said, like, they're weak in the middle between the D tackles and the linebackers. And they should have really, again, this is, Monday, Tuesday morning quarterbacking. They really should have done the Bill Belichick 5-man front that he did against St. Louis.
Why didn't they? That's so weird.
You just put 5 in there. I mean, you could still have essentially a nickel package.
Because you just swap. You just, instead of that other linebacker, you have a lineman. It's the same package, basically.
It is hard when you got 2 really good wideouts like Godwin and Mike Evans. But at the end of the day, Baker... I like Baker, but I would much rather let him beat us or try and beat us. And the reason he did beat them, you got to give him credit, is because they were committed to the run, and so the play fake worked, right? Whether or not they were running for a lot, the play fake works because you're seeing it consistently, which we've talked about Shanahan not doing enough keeping up with that. So yeah, dude, I don't know why they didn't change anything. I don't know why they didn't do anything. Dallas, I do think, is probably still the better team, but yeah, they just they didn't have enough gamers to like Philly got whooped, but man, they were trying to get the ball to Devontae, right? Get the ball to Devontae Smith. He almost single-handedly changed that game, which maybe means there's a lot of problems that they still only scored 9, and he was making plays. And maybe it's different with A.J. Brown there, but there was only like a spurt where they're like, let's get CD the ball like crazy. And it's like, no, like every 4 or 5 plays we need to try and like specifically get him the ball.
Well, but that's actually otherwise how the pick 6 happened. He was trying to force the ball to CD.
Yeah, which
honestly, that's the downside, right? When you're telegraphing, hey, we need to get this guy involved, the guy goes, oh, I mean, okay, I'll just.
The safety's like, I'll look over there.
Yeah.
It's why she struggled a little bit, is because they were trying to get it to Kelsey a lot, but it's why. This may be a similar question to nerves versus preparation, is like best wideout, great wideout versus like a good, like the Niners when they had Crabtree, or kind of even what they have now, where it's like not the best, but they have a lot of, I got some weird stuff going on over here. A lot of like really good guys. So like on any given play they'll be open, And I think to win a lot of games, you probably need that more than just Terrell Owens
Yeah.
or Randy Moss or whatever, because those guys end up being a problem. But in a big game, you're like, I need a guy I can go to, right? That's what it is. Um,
Well, I mean, you talked about in basketball. You guys would just be like, listen, we need a bucket. And that's
yep,
something I do think the Niners actually really struggle with is just that we just need a play. Because of, to
yeah.
your point, we don't have Terrell. We don't have a Devontae. I'm thinking of the guy from the Green Bay.
Smith.
Well, I'm
Oh,
thinking, because he's still a stud
Adams.
to me.
Adams.
He's just
Devontae
on some,
Adams.
yeah, Devontae Adams. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have
I
the
mean, he's
guy who just wins the matchup.
just always open,
Just
right?
always
Throw
open.
it, and he's gonna catch it. Yep.
But if you look at, because this is also a key in the playoffs. Think about when New York beat the Patriots. Guys who had never been making plays made big plays. Buffalo versus Pittsburgh, they had a guy who I didn't even know was on the team. Essentially, made this Mika Fitzpatrick tried to throw him down. He kept his balance, ran into the end zone.
Shakir.
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah. He's been making plays the last half of the year.
That's just
He's
it.
been
When we're
yeah.
headed for the playoffs, okay, cool. You're going to double TO. Well, okay, but we have this guy who's now really starting to come on. Kansas City has Rasheed.
Rasheed Rice.
He's
Rasheed
coming on.
Rice.
You need that in the
Rasheed
playoffs.
slash, as Nick says, Jerry Rice.
Right. Like
He,
I can't remember the guy for New York I was talking about, has never made a play since. He was good for those playoff
Odell.
runs.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
not
no, 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 no.
yeah, the helmet catch boy.
Oh, oh, Tyree. Yeah,
Nothing
David
since.
Tyree.
But he was there. He was making plays when you needed it. Dallas didn't have anybody. Eagles obviously don't have anybody, unfortunately. I get we were talking about Devontae Smith, you said?
Yeah.
He's a stud, but, and I get AJ was out. I understand that. But this is the mistakes you make in wins cost you in losses. This has been the story all year. They just happen to keep winning. Dallas has never been able to stop the run. Arizona ran for 200 yards on them. We ran for a bunch of yards on them. Their tackling was bad, and I get Debo's a beast. Their tackling was bad then. Eagles, no identity on offense. We're winning close games because other teams were making mistakes and they weren't. The same things that were going wrong went wrong in the playoffs. And to me, that's coaching. Is your team not being ready, not being out of position? Someone made the point the Eagles look like this is the first time they're playing together. At the end of the
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
you looked your
Yeah.
worst at the end. That's coaching to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because to be in the locker room makes a big difference to know are they listening to the guys? Because I've,
They
you
backed
know,
up Sirianni pretty hard. So,
yeah, but then they didn't tackle. So
oh,
last time I
agreed.
checked, if you're not tackling, you're not really trying. And so some of that, maybe they just didn't think they could win. Maybe that was,
I do think that's part of
I,
it. I really do.
but again, so within the locker room, I get they're saying the right things. They all say the
Yeah.
right things. Kelsey, I love Kelsey. He says the right things. Jalen says the right things. Although I don't know if I like Jalen's body language at times, kind of like too reserved. I
Sure.
almost want him to like get upset at his team and like fire him up. Like he's too
Well, like
calm.
Mahomes, none of his team had a problem when he was yelling at the referees because they're like,
Right.
dude
They
cares.
also knew that he was yelling at his receivers to like
True, but they
stop.
like the fire. You know?
He might be MVP this year if his team
Oh
actually
yeah.
caught
God, they
his
suck. Oh
touchdowns
my
and
gosh.
passes, right? He was as good as anyone, and his team had the most drops. But anyway, like I related to we mentioned I coach CrossFit. There are times where certain coaches, and I've been one of those, where I'll be coaching a class and people just like kind of scatter to go get the things. And it's like, guys, I wasn't done telling you the things that you're going to need to know to do the things, right? And they're like, oh, I didn't hear that. It's like, well, because you're not locked in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But like, if I'm certain people's coach every day, which I'm not, but some places do it where it's like, hey, you're Monday 5:30 for the rest of the year. Let me know if you need to change. And so then you get used to those people who are always there. And so you don't know if it's the athlete not listening, which then is kind of the coaching. They've lost the respect of the coach, or if the coach is not making the adjustment and putting him in the right position. And I don't know why the Eagles look the way they did. They have too many Like Slay may not be that great as a cornerback, but he's been in the league a long time. They have a lot of their D tackle, their defensive line is really really good. I don't know if they're down their linebackers, but it could just be when they get on the field, they're not in position.
You
They're
know
not in
what's
the right alignment. That like from what I've heard from coaches, I don't care how good you are if you're not in the right position. Like if you're at the goal line and you're not giving, if you're giving up inside leverage, you've lost already. I don't, maybe you're Dion and you make it work or cool, but Dion's old now and he's not doing that anymore. So, which partially is why people want talent over just like
right?
ability because at times talent will overwhelm
Well,
smarts and whatnot.
question?
So
What's the difference between talent and ability? That's interesting. I never heard that
I
before.
didn't mean ability. I meant
Oh,
I meant like coachability or
ah.
like you're like, how's that guy in the league? And it's like, well, he's always in the right spot. You're like,
Well, it
Jennings, our guy Jennings. He
right.
runs a 4.7. He supposedly his hands aren't that good, but he seems to catch everything. He seems to be in the right position. He blocks like he's
Well, and
also
even
like
look at like
Gabe Davis from the Bills. He
yeah.
does the same thing. Not the most amazing guy, blocks on every play. He didn't get one target one game. Didn't complain, just did his job.
Well, I mean, you
Like
even look
that's
at
you want those guys.
Edelman, um,
Yep.
his twin. I can't remember his name.
Right.
They're the same
Amendola,
player because
Brandon Stokely
right.
before that with Peyton.
They're the reason that the slot receivers become like that's why we have Cooper Cup because
Yep.
they just knew their job and they became annoyingly good at it. Where you're just like, son of a bitch, he's open again.
Well, you're not gonna put a safety on him
Right.
because a safety, which is it's this whole thing I'll get into in a second, but you can't put a safety on them. They're too bit. They're not quick enough generally, right? Can't put a linebacker on them because they're way too slow. You can't. You're not gonna put your number one corner on it because you still got 6'4", freak of nature out there that you got to cover. So it's like who are you going to put on him? So, obviously there's always been nickel corners, but it's funny how stuff rotates as far as importance. The running back is going to, I think, come back into importance at some point, right? But it's become quarterback. And then it was like, oh, we need a edge rusher and a cornerback to like cover their best guy. And then it's like, well, now they have the edge rusher who gets to me in 2 seconds, and they have a great corner. That guy doesn't get open. Now I need someone who looks like me that's faster, and they can get open that quick, right? So
Yeah.
then it's the slot guy, and then now okay, we need a nickel corner. It's just it's funny how things evolve, and it's like we don't need these big, monstrous Ray Lewis linebackers. We need gosh, what's the guy number 45? Devin White, I think,
For who?
from the Bucks. I
Oh, I
think
don't
it's
know
the
their team
Bucks.
that well. I
Dude,
apologize.
he's nasty. He was at LSU. They
Same
didn't
with the
really know where to
Ravens.
put him. They just put him on the field, and he's kind of a linebacker, kind of a safety, is really mean and strong and fast. And you're like, okay, well, you'll play. But then at some point, a team's gonna be like, we're just gonna run the ball, and you're not gonna be able to stop it because we got 340-pound fellas.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do? Um,
I mean, that was
but
Dallas's
then they'll be like,
downfall. Literally can't
but
stop
then
the run.
then they can outspeed them because hey, we're gonna give you seven man box because you can't throw it.
I mean,
It's
what's
just
funny
that
is
constant evolving chess match.
it is, but at the same time, the Colts tried it. Remember, like the Colts were built to stop the pass because the assumption was we're going to score. So we
Hmm.
score, we're going to get you behind. Obvious passing
Right.
situations, let Dwight Freeney eat. Little tougher when you don't get the lead and they're running the ball down your throat. Which actually, for that reason, is partially why I picked Washington to beat Michigan, and I still think Penix could have. He just did not look like himself. Was because the problem with running the ball is cool. You have 300 yards rushing. If you're not consistently getting the touchdown, all you did was run a bunch of time off the clock, and you have 9 points. And now that team can
Right.
really easily get back into it.
When there's not usually as many big plays,
Right.
right? It might, but in the same sense, then it's wearing them out. But then
Yep.
again, if you don't get the big gash 25, 30 yard plus run, and then you're close in the end zone where you're not going to pass. Now they do have all 11 guys in the box. What are you going to do? And so, yeah, it does become a bit of that chess match
I mean, look at
of,
the Suns. When the Suns were like, "Hey, we're going to shoot the first 8 seconds of the play clock," Spurs were like, "Cool, we're going to hold it for the whole play clock, and we're just going to be consistent and efficient."
they still should, let's be honest, they still should have beat the Spurs,
No, I
just like
agree.
Sacramento.
So
Sacramento
totally
should have beat
agree.
LA way back when.
But in general, their whole dynasty was based on good defense, control the clock. We're just going to be efficient. And the Suns
Yeah,
were
put
like, "Hey,
people
listen,
in
we're
good
just assuming we're
positions.
going to outscore you. We're just going to try to outrun you." And that can back. That's like I was just meaning that can backfire too, right?
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
Miami's problem. Yeah, we can score 70, but also we couldn't score more than 7. So it's that
yeah, against good teams. Yeah.
But
Well, and
go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. Mm-mm.
You had a thought.
To bring up the Spurs, like I think this goes to a topic we'll cover probably later. I don't think today, but at some point of like the talent versus like just kind of the average player,
True.
where it's like you need the size, you need the Tim Duncan, you need, whatever. But Popovich was looking at very specific skills. You need people who were smart, people who could shoot, and people who would hustle and play defense, right? So then that becomes a very easy model to find instead of trying to find LeBron in the draft. Everyone's been trying to find LeBron since LeBron. Carmelo was awesome. He also wasn't LeBron as good as he was, right? And so when you have, whether you call it the system or just the eye for the player, it's much easier. Like, hey, we have Tim Duncan. He's awesome. We'll do all the things through him as much as we can. Tony Parker, as great as he was, I know he's in MVP conversations at one point. Without him, he's not going to be Tony Parker,
No.
right? Manu, maybe so with Popovich, I mean, but like each piece really filled a role that they needed, and when they were clicking, was a lot, they always won 50 games, and they were always a threat. Now they didn't win every year, but until they come across like a really talented team that just one on one, you guys cannot guard us, and sorry, you're going to lose. Um, but yeah, it's kind of because college is a lot of that, like a lot of recruiting. Can we get the best players? But then you see Washington kind of come out of nowhere, and a guy you're like, how are they so good? Or Michigan, they don't have that many 5 stars. Ironically,
Oh, really?
I think they had three or something like
Get
that.
out of here! Really?
I'll have to look it up, but it was like JJ McCarthy was one. I think one of their linemen was one. I think on both sides of the line they had a couple, but they might have more now. But like his or his class, JJ's, who's a junior, they didn't have that many 5 stars. It was like we're going to develop these kids into what they're supposed to be, and
You mean what
some of
college
that
is
is
supposed to be?
those kids listen. Some 5 stars are like, I'm the man, just play, let's play man defense. I'm the corner. I'm going to do
Right.
it. And then they come across the guy who's going to beat him every play. Like, hey, do you know, do you know zone? Because you're going to need to, because you're getting burned every time. Um, but with that, like, that person doesn't know the difference between, like, for example, with man, when you turn and run, you face them. With zone, you turn and face the corner or the quarterback.
Oh,
So it's a different right because in man you're playing the man, you're
right.
tracking him. With zone, unless it's a matchup zone. But anyway,
I
with
get
zone,
no. Yeah, yeah. I get
I
what you're
I
saying.
will turn, put him on my back. I'll keep hands on him, but I'm watching because at some point my safety will hopefully
Right.
come
You're
over.
guarding a zone.
Uh,
You're guarding the
and
zone,
then I
watching
might have
eyes.
to
That
get,
makes sense.
but yeah, because like again we're in zone, so like zone is like eyes on, and that's one of the things that they talked about last night is like, oh, you can see it's zone because they're all literally looking at the quarterback. Like, oh, that's maybe they need to be a little bit more disciplined, like looking kind of acting like they're looking at their guy.
Well, yeah.
But
There was no
um
disguise. There was not. It was just
yeah,
like this is what you're gonna get, and it's it's unfortunate because, and this is an interesting question, honestly. That how so obviously now we're looking at Dan Quinn and being like, are you really that good? And I don't know how much of that is warranted versus bad matchup, but also like why why wouldn't you want a little bit of disguise? I mean, to just basically line up and tell
mm,
the quarterback, "Here's exactly what we're doing," seems weird, but I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, they do have Stephon Gilmore, who's awesome. So you are kind of okay with like
Dude,
just
he
line him up.
got
He's awesome. He did get
burned.
burned. He's getting older, so like he used to be the man. He's less of kind of like Patrick Peterson used to be the
Oh, he
man.
got
Is
burned
kind
too.
of playing a good, but he's old for a corner now.
Right.
And Bland got burned a ton this year. He has like six pick sixes, but that's cool.
But
He got a
that's a
lot of
toss
touchdowns
up.
against but that was against bad QBs they were winning
Sure.
anyway. They weren't gonna lose those games.
Right.
It was Mac Jones. It was what the other Jones for the Giants. Like there were several really bad
Oh gosh, he's terrible.
quarterbacks where they were winning by 40 already. It's like I don't know. Um, yeah, it's hard too because if it's never been your philosophy, how do you implement that?
Right.
But I would tell our corners, and I didn't coach corners, but I'd be like, guys, don't just automatically line up 7 yards away from the jam and bail. Just bail, and then
Did you see
right if
Snead
we end up,
on Tyreek?
I think Tyreek tweeted about
Oh, dude,
the
he's like
getting
he
get
jammed me to Cancun.
yeah
It was a great rep. It was
yeah.
really impressive.
But with Snead and McDuffie, man, those guys, there's certain, if you've ever seen any Dion stuff, with Peyton teaching him how to play corner or just like in general, he talks about like which hand to jam with and stuff like that. Those guys like live that because I don't
Yeah.
know if those guys are the most athletic corners, but man, they do what they're supposed to.
Well,
Like
I think
they
people
do everything that
forget.
they're supposed to.
To your point, by the way, about talent, is now take a guy who's talented and have him study film. Dion was a film
Yeah,
junkie. I don't think
right.
people do not give him the credit he deserves for how much extra. And I'll say it again. Charles Woodson literally game planning within the game plan. That's the extra stuff that makes you a Hall of Famer, and it makes you. I don't want to say this about any players who lost this weekend to say, oh, they didn't prepare, because we
Right.
don't know. We don't know how much is coaching, putting them in the right spots. Acho is pretty convinced the Eagles did not put their guys in the right spots. And I do kind of agree that the Cowboys didn't draft really well to try to, and that puts your coordinator in a really weird spot. But I think that's also hindsight is 2020. But that is how
Well,
you get in the Hall of Fame is your tape
your
preparation.
coordinator has to be like, we need this guy.
True.
And the problem is, Jerry Jones is a little bit like Al Davis used to be, and like, we need some splash. So Micah Parsons is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate type of guy. Van Der Esch has been really good when he's been on the field. Ironically, Sean Lee gets hurt all the time too. I think he might have even got hurt this year, but I think he got hurt last year, if nothing else, and retired, whatever. Like, they have guys getting hurt, unfortunately, but they had drafted CeeDee Lamb, who is awesome, who might have been the best receiver this year. But
Stud. Just a stud.
but if we watched, and not to say that McCarthy is this or who was the guy who used to be there that went to the Chargers, their coordinator.
Kellen
He used to be
Moore.
a quarterback. Kellen Moore. Um, not that they're Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, but they're like, hey, let's trade Tyreek, who might be he is a Hall of Famer. People are talking about him possibly being a top five all time, just because of how dynamic he is. Like, he catches the ball and like that was short, stops, and he's faster than everyone catching up to him already. I mean, that's just
He
unreal.
reminds
They,
me
tr-
of
they
Dante Hall, Devin Hester, just with that like shifty good luck.
that and that burst.
Yes.
But they traded him for like, hey, we're gonna bolster our defense because that's what we're gonna need. We have Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs and like all these guys that are studs. We need to get some corners that are gonna be nasty. After trading Ward to the Niners, they're like, we think we can do better than Ward, which so do we. Um,
There's an argument.
right. So they end up having two all-pro corners essentially, which is like, how do you end up dealing with that when now you have, um, I think it's Jones, the D
Yeah,
tackle,
yeah, yeah.
who's really like. So now they have pieces. Their linebacker's really good.
It's like
It's
Brady in
kind of
reverse. Because starting with the
Yeah.
really good defense and then getting it's really an interesting
Right. It was like
gamble.
Mahomes score a ton. But anyway, like I don't think the Cowboys thought that, that would come back to bite him. And that's Jerry Jones not really knowing football. I don't
Yeah,
care if you've been around the game for 30 years. Like he got rid of Jimmy Johnson. Like that just tells you all you
just
need
out
to
of
know.
ego. Yeah,
Like just that tells you all you need to know about his
and
ability to
never
understand
replaced
football.
him with a Jimmy since.
No.
Like,
And
listen,
and Swipe, yeah.
did you
Go
see
ahead.
his fiery halftime Jimmy Johnson's halftime speech?
Mm-mm.
It was
To the
great.
team?
It was well, no, unfortunately, if you're a
Oh,
Cowboys
yeah,
fan,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
wish.
Oh, Jimmy Johnson. Sorry, I was
Yeah,
thinking you were saying Jones. I was like, yeah, I did see that, and he was fired up. Like,
I
yep,
don't
he still
think
loves the Cowboys. It's
I
crazy.
don't think McCarthy is that guy, and part of it is because and this is where I think we should have seen this coming a long time ago. Is he's a very vanilla coordinator, and I just don't see him being the guy that would have been able. Because that's something I did want to ask you: is why couldn't the and this is my thought process is I don't think McCarthy's the guy to right that ship, but why uh, Cleveland couldn't get their head back on straight, partially because of Flacco. I understand that. Cowboys couldn't get their head back on straight. Eagles consistently this year have been able to get their head back on straight. Why did none of these there was no even there was garbage time points for the Cowboys, but none of these teams made it even competitive, which is nuts to me.
S- So when I coached, we had been blown out a couple times. Most of it was because we didn't have a O line or D line that could kind of stand up to the teams we were playing. They're just bigger. They were either running teams or like a state champion level team, which we weren't at that time. So I know from my perspective, I was like, man, I have no idea what we could do to do this. And some of that is as a coach within the fitness realm, I tend to have plans for plans. Like, oh, you can't do this, I have this. Oh, you can't do that, I have this. This is feeling weird, I got this. Like I tend to have A, B, C, D options in my head. And I most time at this point I don't have to have those readily available. They just kind of are always up in there, right? And I think the problem with a lot of coaches is we've talked about their script that they have
Mm-hmm.
or the things that they like, they don't they don't adjust well when the things aren't working. It's like they can't how we talked to or no, we didn't talk about it was first things first. They were talking about basically people are now either hiring middle linebackers or these like analyst guru nerd people,
True.
right? And so like Kyle Shanahan would be in that analyst guru nerd, right? He didn't play at least at that level. McDaniel is in there too, even though he did play, I think college or whatever. Which it doesn't seem like he would be able to play college if
No,
when you look at
that
him, but like
surprises me.
he did, he did. It may have been like D3, but still played football at a college level, whatever. But then there's Vrabel and D'Amico Ryans and the like.
LaFleur's from Shannon's tree, and he's kind of that same.
Right. And so for some reason, it seems like some people aren't good at all at making the adjustments on the fly. Our Bodie, did you ever meet Bodie? He was a O lineman. He played in college. He was our run game coordinator and O line coach. He was great at figuring out what like he could. Also, he was good at not watching the ball, which is a big deal, right? He would just watch his O line, and he'd be like, "You did this, you did this, you did this, you did this." Fix X, Y, and Z. And so I think some of the coaches now don't understand how to do that, or their coaches aren't relaying that to them, or they're not hearing it. I think it comes a lot with that because in basketball, you only really need one coach in the sense of like you need the other coaches to be seeing the other players,
Mm-hmm.
but as a whole, you can kind of see what's happening, and you're like something's off, and then you watch one player not hustle, you're like, oh well, you just got to get more effort to get into the play to make it work, right? Because certain plays, Golden State is great at it. You slow play it a little bit, and then you're through. Um, but there's certain plays that they just have to be fast, right? You have to cut hard, do the things. And so football is such a big deal where it's You got a corner over here and a corner way over there. You got two safeties playing in different spots. You got multiple, at least two, if not three linebackers at times, or defensive. Like
A
you have
lot of moving pieces.
so many people to watch, and that D line coach may not see that one thing right away, or maybe they're caught up on a hold that was a hold that didn't get called. You see some coaches, they're just not worried about it anymore. Like it's called, they're not changing it, and they just what's it was a holding. That's fine, cool. They'll get the next one, I'm sure, because they realize that we're upset. Like, how do we then make that adjustment? And I think to the thing you're talking about, NFL coaches, or you've talked about before we started, NFL coaches aren't as good at a lot of. I don't know if it's as a lot of coaches at different levels, but to get in the NFL, you have to know people, right? To
True.
get kind of that
I
opportunity.
mean, look at Arthur
And
Smith formerly with the Falcons.
to be fair, they did go 8-9, and I don't think Desmond Ritter's a good quarterback. But we can talk
Sure.
about and analyzing that,
Well,
in a
his
minute
his
or
his
whatever.
complete misuse of one of his best players, that running back,
Well, and
would
he
have
has Kyle
alone gotten
Pitts,
fires.
who's
That
supposed
too.
to be like this amazing. How do you have those two guys? I don't care who then is the wide receivers. They're going to be open. If you run a swing to that side, that corner's coming up, right? If they're in a certain right, you just have to play with it a little bit. But again, if your quarterback can't get him the ball, which I'm not
Oh,
saying Desmond
true.
can or can't, but
I think
I
I'm kind of
think
with
I
you. I
think
don't think he's very good.
I mean, again,
It's rough.
it's hard. They were really good at the level he played at was, I think, Conference USA, Cincinnati, I think he was at or whatever. But they're not generally playing the big teams.
Well, and real
So it
quick,
almost becomes a little bit of Leinart playing at
sure.
USC, throwing to Williams and whoever that are miles open. You're like, well, of course it makes sense why he couldn't adjust to the NFL speed.
But to your point, though, at the same time, right? Because this is something that bugs me, and it's kind of that I had wanted to talk a little bit about why we're so in love with special, and I think this fits perfectly because,
Hmm.
and I didn't get this, and I will keep saying it. If you want to get and be a smarter football fan, I think I'm going to buy you and Dad a copy. Take your eye off the ball 2.0, because the average fan is just like, oh, the quarterback sucks, and I just did it. I just did it with Desmond Ritter. I've been watching enough film to actually know if that's true, because your OC, like we said, has to do a great job getting you in a position to succeed. Your teammates have to execute. And something that I don't think is valued as much in the NFL, unfortunately, that I'm now going to give a ton of credit to Shanahan, even though he bugs me in some areas. He can pick out talent. He is constantly getting poached. The 49ers, as an organization, are one of the most talented in the NFL, where everybody wants their people all the way down to the O-line coach. And
Hmm.
there is that bar, right, of how much help does a quarterback need, and we sometimes look at it as a negative, but there are things that every quarterback you can really emphasize that are their strengths, and I don't know if a lot of quarterback or coaches in the NFL are good at emphasizing the strengths of their quarterbacks without then overdoing it, where it's like, Josh, just bail us out, right? Josh started
Yeah.
playing well when they ran the ball. To your point of before we started, I think running backs will come
Well,
back because they help your quarterback.
and he didn't play well those last two games, and they still won because
Correct.
they ran the ball for 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes a
That's a
lot
big
of
deal.
pressure off. I think you had heard, and I hope this relates. Jared Goff had mentioned because they'd asked him like, "How long do you think it takes for a quarterback to develop?" And he's like, "I think you got to give him 3 or 4 years."
Oh, I agreed completely.
And so
Look
then
at
the
Love.
problem the problem is, a lot of guys are getting not much time to the the Doug Peterson got fired 10 games in or whatever. Or not
After
Doug Peterson.
winning a Super Bowl.
No, sorry. I mean he did get fired, but the guy for the Panthers, Rick, right?
Oh, Frank Reich.
Mark Frank Reich.
Mm-hmm.
He got fired like 11 games in, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, Bryce Young isn't looking good. It's like, well, maybe he's not good. Maybe we don't have enough wideouts. Maybe he's running for his life every play. Maybe it's because you can only have seven guys protecting him so often, because then he's eight, then you got three wideouts. If they only rush four or five, they have now they have six to your three. So everyone's double covered. You know what I mean? So it's hard to evaluate who is good and who isn't, because you look at, I love mentioning Alex Smith. Alex Smith was hot trash for 6 years, and then the seventh year, magically, he was okay. I won't say he was amazing. I think he might have made a Pro Bowl at one
He was
point.
the king of the 7-yard throw, and I love Alex Smith,
Right.
but it was the throw it short, and it was just like, why'd you even bother?
But unfortunately, those first 6 years might have been why he did that.
Oh,
Because
true.
he probably
Fair
always
enough.
got pounded.
Yeah.
He always got intercepted. So, I mean,
Yep.
you really have to think. It's funny that the quarterback is the most valuable player, but the reality is the O line, the five, they make the guys look so much better.
True.
If you can protect with five O linemen, you don't need a tight end, you don't need a running back often, right? Meaning they're rushing four or even five. You can man up on the O line against their five, four or five, just about every play. You're going to be very successful, because now you have seven people that could go off for a route, or five people that could go off for a route, or so on and so forth. So if you look at any great quarterback, they always had a good O line,
Oh,
and when
100%.
they weren't as good,
Nope.
right? Andrew Luck won 11 games despite, like, every year. I know you guys have talked about it last. Like, he won 11 games when he wasn't hurt every year, and he was on his back. Can you imagine what would happen if he had an O line where he wasn't sacked 40 times in the
Well, and
year?
look at Mahomes in the Super Bowl versus Tampa. They lost because he was running for his life.
Running for his life.
And
And
they
so
made Mahomes look bad.
some people are like, "Oh yeah, Lamar, he's amazing," and he is. But like, it's like, no, he looks better because he has a bad O-line. He has to run for his life. And actually, like, he's making himself look better. But look how much he's going to probably win MVP this year, because he's been able to stay in the pocket,
Yep.
because he can throw. So
He doesn't give him nearly enough credit for how good of a thrower he is.
it's such a crazy thing. I still feel bad, because I feel like, for Fountain Hills, Shane, our quarterback, man, that kid could throw the ball like crazy. But he had started, I think, since his sophomore year. But he had gotten hurt a couple times. Like,
Yeah.
line wasn't always amazing. Wasn't as comfortable with it. We had different coordinators, I think, every year, or like a different system. So he was never comfortable. And so I know that kid.
Quick way to ruin a quarterback.
He was probably our most athletic player. Like, he was just about, if not our fastest player, could dunk, and he was like 6'1".
Wow.
Big hands, cannon of an arm. Now, whether or not he could read the defense also depends on what he's learning in the film room from people
Right.
and whatnot. But it's like, seeing that, it's like, I can equate that to the NFL of, like, maybe Carson Wentz actually is good. And Doug Peterson, whatever.
Well, or
you could
the
go
fun
so
one,
many different ways.
David Carr. He got sacked 300 times in like 2 years. Good luck. You're
Yeah,
never going to develop.
And it's not like Derek Carr is, like, I wouldn't say as prospects, Derek Carr was infinitely better, but he's had a better career. Well, maybe because he wasn't on his butt the whole time. So it's unfortunate, because we had talked about talent, and it is so much. It's not easier to coach talent in the sense of, like, if they're doing something wrong because they don't think they're wrong, but they can just make a play, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
Josh Allen will throw across his body like he's not supposed to, which, Purdy Kyle was mad that he threw that pass back across the
Yep.
middle. He made the play, but what Mangini talks about is, like, if you are okay with that, you have to be okay with the interceptions that come from that too.
Right.
You
Well, my
can't, like,
favorite-
glorify, hey, great pass, and then when he throws a pick, you're like, Brock, like, you need to not throw that. And you're like, dude, you told me to do that. So
Yeah, you don't get to
I
pick.
think
That's the Brett Favre effect. You have to live with both.
yes.
It is what it is.
And so-
now, you hope the QB continues to learn and says, I'm going to be very smart about the moments I do that, because that is the
Right.
difference, right? Like Josh Allen throws some
Mahomes has
horrendous
been doing
picks.
that this year. Mahomes
That's
has not been doing that because his guys don't always catch it. So he's like,
true.
let's maybe not.
But that's actually something I wanted to bring up because when we talk, so I have a theory that the thing that makes Mahomes special, and we kind of talked about it, is the 40-yard throw where he went 40 yards backwards, only he could make. But I think we have fallen in love with a little bit of a lie that's actually what makes Mahomes special. What makes Mahomes special? He's excellent at reading defense. His ball placement is great. He is
Dude.
very, very, very smart. I think and this is my theory. I think one of the reasons why, and listen, I think Josh Allen is an incredible quarterback, but he only got an opportunity because the dude had a cannon of an arm and a bunch of talent. I think coaches fall in love with that because in a weird way it makes their job easier because they're going to make up for more. You don't have to be as creative because
Well,
coaching
and their
Purdy,
their
good.
mistakes don't fall on you because it's like,
True.
oh, he's doing some wild man stuff.
But coaching Purdy, and we kind of talk, and this isn't supposed to. Purdy's just the example right now because he's kind of the weird outlier in the playoffs. I get it. I'm a biased Niners fan.
Small frame, small hands,
Right.
not a cannon of an arm.
To even go back, and I'm not, when I say this, I'm not saying he's Brady. I'm not saying he's Peyton. I'm not saying he's Joe Montana, but none of those guys, like, if I were to honestly ask some analysts, would you take Mahomes over Brady, Montana, and Peyton just in terms of athletic ability, talent? They would say yes. But
They
that's
may even
not
take
really
Josh Allen.
right, but that's not really what makes Mahomes so great. What makes Mahomes so great is his decision making, and I don't think we fall in love with Love and Stroud, and they played great. I'm not knocking them, but we fall in love with them because they make these wow throws. But what's going to get them a Super Bowl is not throwing to a dude who's 17 yards open. It's all the
Right.
other throws that, in my opinion, they both have still made, but won't make a top 10 sports center.
Well,
The
who
good
was it
decision
that
making.
made just like I think it was Baker that was making throws that was like barely sneaking past the, hard throws.
Yeah.
Because to your point, right? The quarterback you want is 6'4", 6'5", 230 something pounds, rocket arm. Obviously they want the brilliance, but
I think they think they can teach the brilliance. I'm going to be honest with you.
right, which is like that's really the entire thing because you want them big because if your O-line sucks, they're not going to get hurt as quick,
Right.
Which is true.
It is. Absolutely.
Possibly. Rocket arm means they don't always have to be on time,
Right.
right? They can throw it off platform, they can throw it late off their back foot, and it'll get there. And it might
Your
not
footwork
get
doesn't
picked.
have to be good. You don't really
Right.
have to be reading the defense. You can get away with a
Right.
lot more.
Your processing doesn't have to be as great. You can
Right.
escape from the pocket, but now Montana was actually quite mobile as a quarterback. If you look,
Really?
like he actually did, he ran more than what you would think. But his most famous play, he was rolling out of the pocket,
True.
right to Dwight Clark,
Which a lot of people actually think he was throwing it away,
right?
which is hilarious,
I don't know.
honestly.
I think he knew how tall Dwight was, but
I've never heard Joe on the subject, so I don't know.
right. But you don't have to coach some of those things because it's like that dude is just. The other thing is too, I might be the best quarterback that could ever play in the NFL. I'm 5'7".
Right.
I'm 180 at best. I can maybe get to 195 if I was really eating. But like I'm not gonna be able to see over the line either.
Nope.
And like my ball placement could be awesome, my processing could be good or better than everyone. So some of it is like, yeah, you kind of do have to be at least over 6'1" because your linemen are at least 6'2" or taller, and they got helmets on. And so it's like, and they usually wear the taller cleats so they can really plan in and whatever, whereas skill positions might wear some different cleats. So they're already going to be taller than you, so you kind of want that guy taller than you. And it's kind of the David Saul thing,
Yep.
right? The biblical David Saul. Saul got picked because he was a head taller than everyone else. He was handsome, whatever. He was a terrible leader. They
Yep.
needed the baby shepherd boy to actually slay the giants. So there is a lot to be said for, having a Purdy where you can just get on him too. Your back foot hits, you have to throw it. Your back foot hits, you have to You know,
Well, he talks
this
about
is
it.
a 5-step drop, meaning
Yeah.
5, and I'm twisting and I'm throwing, or 5 and hitch. I'm hitting, I'm hitching, and I'm throwing that thing to where I need it to be.
When he talks
And
about it,
that is
he's
the thing with Mahomes.
yeah. But and Purdy, real quick, Purdy talks about the fact like he doesn't have the biggest arm, so his footwork has to be impeccable, his timing has to be impeccable. He has to know where everybody is.
Right.
To be fair, that's also hard to scout, but Mahomes also does that. He's excellent
Right.
at it, and doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's a frustrating part for me, and I get it. It's much harder to explain to the average fan because I wouldn't have understood. I've been like, you just threw an out. Who cares? But not understanding what went into throwing the 10-yard out, that it's either
Yeah.
a first down or a pick six. I just
Right.
think maybe we need to rethink because the top two quarterbacks of all time, you would not be able to pick out of a lineup. Joe
Right.
Montana, Tom Brady. You would have been like, "Do you play football? Really?"
Yeah, you would go Dan Marino would probably be the first pick because he threw as hard as anyone.
Mm-hmm.
He was big and tough, and you're like, yeah, this guy, we don't need to run the ball one play.
Nope.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, and then you look at running backs are so varied, you couldn't even do that. But yeah, Aaron Donald, undersized. There's a lot of people where and it's literally with everything. I'm sure in your industry it's that way. I think the people, I can't say industry. Not a professional coach. I have been, but I'm not anymore. In the sense of fitness. There's probably at most 10% that's really really good, like really exceptional,
Right.
can thrive just about anywhere. And really, what you need from a and that's like coach, that's players, that's I don't know what the percentage is after that. Very good, good, marginal. You can't really use them. I don't know what those breakdowns or whatever, or what even the categories are. But your coach has to get you, even that bottom where it's like the bottom row where they're not usable. They suck so bad. They're
Mm-hmm.
not athletic. They're not in good position. They're on your team. You
Yep.
have some of those guys. How do you have to use them? So how do you get them in good positions, or even use them in the right role? Then, it's why certain great teams have great special teams.
Right.
Is because those people aren't starters,
No.
but they take pride in that, and so
They're
there's
special
an
teams
ability
specialists who teams actually want.
that right there's the ability to take that bottom 10%, make them the 10 to 30%, then
Well, or they're the
take
best
the 10 to 30 and
10% of anybody's 10%. So our special teams
right,
kicks
the low,
your ass.
right, to where you're raising everyone 5 to 10% of what they're actually capable of. But yeah, there's not enough guys like that.
No.
I mean, it's crazy to think, and Belichick probably should be gone right now. But Belichick got fired. Mike Vrabel got fired. Whether I like him or not, the guy for the Eagles might get fired. McCarthy has been a very successful coach. To think he's not like a top 10%. He's won 10 plus games a lot of years.
Right.
Most coaches, if you look, are 8-8, right? They're that 500, or they're 10-30. They're horrible, but he's not. So like it. Then I guess if you break it down, there's a good 10%, but then that last like 1% is so unattainable.
Yeah.
And we think there's a lot of them. It's why every year we're like, Caleb Williams is going to be good.
People are saying he's the best since Andrew Luck. I'm like, I mean, I know we're guessing, but
They said Trevor was going to be this next level, and he
prince
might get
that was
there.
promised.
He might.
Anyway.
Oh, stop! You need to just get off of that. He doesn't even like the nickname.
I think
Trevor
listen,
said he doesn't like the nickname.
No. Sorry, that wasn't against Trevor. I don't think I like Trevor.
No.
I actually think he to also turn it around a little bit. I think we put, like you said, we really should give these guys like 3-4 years, and also give Trevor credit that like they're not good. He's a big reason they're good. I was just rolling my eyes at like some of the things the media does to these guys because it's not their fault. Trevor has never come out and been like, "Yes, I'm the best, and you should worship me," because he's a lot of these guys. The media does this to them, and I don't have anything against Trevor. I think the problem that I have is we look at people's draft status, and all of a sudden they get 20 chances. Look at Sam Darnold. still getting chances with the Niners. I'm just like, people are like, oh, Caleb Williams is going to be the best since Andrew Luck. It's like, well, his backup came in the bowl game and threw 6 touchdowns. So again, with football, your quarterback needs a good offensive coordinator. You could be, like you said, the best that ever was. If you don't have an O-line or don't have a good offensive coordinator, you could look like garbage. Favre in Atlanta, and actually I think ironically Steve Young was in Atlanta. Like, people go from terrible situations. I think even Gannon, who went to the Raiders, was terrible before that. Where you're drafted could determine your entire career. If Brady goes to the Browns, are we talking about a GOAT? I don't think so. If Mahomes goes to the Raiders, does he have two Super Bowls? Two and one. That's right.
He's been to 3.
He wouldn't have any Super Bowls. So
he might still be awesome, but they wouldn't be winning anything.
He would be Damian Lillard, where we all agree Damian Lillard is an incredible player. He's won nothing because Portland could never put enough together to get him where he needed to go. Great player. It matters. Where you're drafted matters. Who's coaching you matters. What they're teaching you matters. And it just bothers me. And again, I get it. People are like, well, it's because of Purdy. No, it's because we don't actually give the... If Mahomes, quote-unquote, has a down year, we're like, gosh, he's playing terrible. Well, his receivers lead the league in drops. Oh, my gosh, Josh Allen looks terrible. They're 6-6. They also fired their offensive coordinator, started running the ball, and all of a sudden... And I get he played badly in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, he looks way better.
He wants to win as a team anyway, so if it means they go 5-1 without that coordinator, we're going to go 5-1, and I'll throw the ball less.
I'll tell you this. There's a reason I don't understand why no one, including Mahomes, actually bugs me, has followed the Brady model. Just don't be the highest paid, and you will have all the weapons you could ever need. You're getting billions of dollars from endorsements. You don't need to be the highest paid guy. You don't.
I was going to mention something similar to that, because the model now is the Purdy model, right? Not just Purdy. It's happened several times where you draft hopefully a good rookie. You have these all-pro, Pro Bowl guys around him, good defense, and then you win that way because, or whether you win the Super Bowl, you end up being really good, and hope they're not good enough to where you have to pay them a ton, but you can still win a lot of games.
Well,
Jalen Hurts, kind of the same deal, right?
Did you know that no quarterback who becomes the lion's share of his team's salary, and I think Mahomes is like the only exception, ever wins another Super Bowl? You has never won, and I think it was the first year of Mahomes' contract. Now, all of a sudden, again, I get it. They're back in the playoffs. They're looking good, but they weren't favorites. He doesn't have a lot of weapons on offense. He's doing a lot with a little, which is kind of what you're hoping, but he's the exception. The rule is as soon as you
and then they restructured again after they restructured it. So I don't even know that they're going to be paying him for a long time, I think is what it ends up being. But yeah, because that's the thing. Do you have Tom Brady? Do you have Pat Mahomes? Do you have even Peyton Manning? Because if you don't, which is why next year will be interesting for Buffalo.
True.
Because they're going to have to. I think Diggs is up. I'm not totally sure about that, but Allen is up, and I think he will get a new contract. They were talking about someone else. Dak is going to have to get a new contract. There's all these guys going to get. Well, who else are you going to pay?
Well, and we'll do this quick. This is what I would do, but I also understand why this is why you don't give quarterbacks 3 years. I also don't understand why Dak was in that playoff game so late. That was weird to me. Felt a little bit like, hey, I'm trying to prove we're actually not that bad. But I would be full on like, listen, we have Lance on our. If we think he's any good, now's the time to find out.
Honestly, it's not a bad role.
Because listen, you can't do worse than Dak. Dak can't win a playoff game.
He's the same type of guy as Dak in the sense, big build, strong arm, got leadership qualities. Yeah, the funny thing is that they replaced Dak kind of with Dak.
Yeah, and that's just it. You'll have to just see. I think you see who you have, and if you have to draft a quarterback, okay, cool. You now have a ton of cap space. I don't think you can pay Dak after how they played. I don't think you can.
I think there's going to be this weird, and it's already kind of happened to where these veteran guys may not end up getting paid. I'm not saying that'll happen, but if it does, I think it'll
I
become
could
a
see it.
trend. Just like a lot of things, if you think you have the guy, you pay him before his fifth year to show him like, hey, we're taking care of you, whatever. Go win us
When really
stuff.
you're taking a discount.
Right, right, and before it hit the next year when they're amazing. Uh,
Or you're trying to get ahead of the market. Be like, well, you're highest paid
right.
now, but in about 20 minutes, you're going to be fourth.
Right. And so it's this funny thing of, Justin Herbert's making $1 billion. There's all these guys making, 40, $50 million a year, and good on them for making that much and whatever. Um, I think I would settle for 25 and win
Same.
because I think you can turn 25 into 50. I don't think you can turn 50 into a championship. Because think about how
Oh, I
many
agree.
freaking State Farm commercials with Mahomes and Maato are going on. And like,
Yeah.
it like so many commercials because they won the Super Bowl. They're
Right.
making bank off. I'm not saying it's 25 million, but they get money every time that thing's played, plus whatever their contract, I imagine, for doing the thing. Um, it's just going to be a weird thing whether it's, we continue to stick with that rookie model quarterback or, people start like, hey, let's actually give this guy 4 years. I kind of like Jerry Jones for that reason. Gave Romo a long time, gave Dak a long time, Garrett, McCarthy, like he actually doesn't pull the trigger quickly.
Yeah.
Kind of a Pittsburgh-esque, like we're sticking with our guy for as long as we can. I'm not saying that's always, there's nothing that's like, there's no philosophy that's like stick with this for always for everything, right? If
Right.
Caleb Williams is available, you'd probably draft Caleb Williams. Or
Yeah.
if you could trade to get him, maybe you just trade to get him.
Which I think we'll
But
talk about because if I'm like Miami, I don't know if I pay Tua, and if you're Dallas, like how much are you
no,
willing to give up for 5 years of maybe? And if he's even decent, your whole team's going to be better. So why
yeah.
not? Honestly, like if I'm Chicago, I am keeping Fields and I am raking in the draft picks
Yeah. Oh, to trade so
because they're number
someone
one
else
right now. I
gets
would say keep Fields.
Williams.
But I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to the draft conversation because I think there's a lot of meat on the bones, especially with how the playoffs have gone. But we real quick should talk about our kind of. I did okay. Oh, I goofed. Okay, I did okay in the wild card round. I didn't see Texans beating the Browns. Chiefs Dolphins I saw coming. I don't remember. Let me check my notes. I thought I had Packers beating the Cowboys because I kind of. Oh no, both Dad and I picked Dallas. I'm actually disappointed in myself. I should have saw that coming.
Never picked Dallas.
Especially since the team, I should have known better. But we both had Dad and I both had Lions, Bills, and Buccaneers. So really, the only miss was Dallas and Cleveland. But I'm really interested in. I mean, obviously Packers play the Niners. I think the Niners win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout just because I think LaFleur is a good coach. I think Love is a good QB. He can make some tough throws. I do think we win. I'm really interested to see how Texans Ravens goes. I think to me, outside of Chiefs Bills, because Chiefs Bills is always fun, that's the most interesting game. Because I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. Because I think the Ravens defense is so good, it could be similar to the Niners. If the Niners defense just comes to play, it could just be a blowout. Because I don't think the Packers defense is that good. But also, I could see that being a close game. I have no idea on Texans Ravens. I don't have a freaking clue. I have no idea what to predict.
I mean, it seems kind of weird to be like, oh, like people will tend to choose the higher seed just to choose the higher seed. I
I
don't
did
know
it.
if that's the case in this situation because people
Yeah.
saw the Texans just do something amazing. Um,
But Browns
I
also
think
suck
if
away
he
from home, so I probably should have seen that coming.
well, and they were saying Garrett has one sack in like the last several games since he got hurt. So like
Yeah.
he's a big deal in that. And again, matchups fights. I think
Correct.
Baltimore is just a nasty defense
Yes.
with just crazy hybrid guy. They got great corners. I think
Their
I
linebackers are amazing.
I think they will win, not because they're the number one seed. Because honestly, I feel like they could either blow everyone out, including the Niners if they played again, or they just have a stinker and whoever
Hmm.
wins Bills Chiefs
That's interesting because
moves on.
I think Stroud to me is the X factor because Lamar was is so well. He didn't look great against the Niners. We did give him like 4 extra possessions to kind of get right. But
Yeah.
obviously, I think Texans defense isn't as good. They looked really good against the Browns. I don't know where they are statistically, but to me, Stroud's the X factor because I do think Lamar is going to play well, especially now that they've moved towards being more in the pocket. I think that actually, ironically, suits him better because then you're able to get more of a flow. This something we don't talk about. Hello, where did you go? What happened? Let me click it. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay. It did that to
Yeah.
Dad too.
Hmm. Is it like an hour and a half in a Bucci or something?
No, because it booted Dad twice.
Oh,
No, so I upgraded. I have a new background. What I thought would help is I turned everything off in terms of animations. That was the first time I tried to switch to a different scene to show the upcoming games. I actually stayed away from it out of fear. Apparently, breaks things. So
mm.
I'll have to see. I'll have to do some research. But I see, man, the only game I feel confident about is the Niners. And even Packers scare me because how well they're playing. All the 3 other games, and we didn't even talk about the Lions. I'm super proud of and impressed by the Lions because Dan Campbell's a stud of a coach with what he's doing. Bro, I don't have a freaking clue because Texans I could see winning because if CJ Stroud plays similarly, I think he's a problem in terms of matchups. But the Ravens also are extremely athletic. They're number one defense for a reason, and I think Lamar will be consistent. So I mean, Ravens could
Well,
just win.
and they're coming off a bye, so they could be rusty. I know we have rust versus rest on there. I don't know if we'll be able to get to it anyway, but it's hard
And we're gonna
to
find out.
not have the timing.
Yeah,
It's hard for me to go against Baltimore. They've realistically only lost 3 games this year, and they could have actually won those because they lost
yeah,
the final game, whatever they weren't playing.
yeah. That
But they
doesn't
only
count.
lost 3 games that they actually led in those games, so they could have
Mm-hmm.
really been 16-1 this
Right.
year. They could have obviously lost other games too. I'm not
Sure.
saying that, but that they won. But in the sense of they being a team that won 13 games, lost 3 games that were close, that they were winning, it's hard for me to bet against them against a Texans team that does have a rookie QB. It's
Right.
just with that defense, I just don't see him being as successful as he had, Stroud being as successful. So I think they win. I think the Niners definitely win. I'm not going to obviously guarantee anything. I'm not that dumb, but I think they win because in the same situation, right?
Yeah.
Great defense is going to have things for them that they're not ready for. Um, both defenses aren't nearly as good, although I think D'Amico Ryan's is better than whoever the Packers.
McDonald.
Is it
Yeah.
McDonald?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I had to look
Um,
him up because I was like, damn, this dude's playing some good D, like
but
impressive.
but anyway, like then that guy, because I think Ryan's will have an idea what he would want to do as a linebacker compared
Sure.
to I don't know if McDonald played,
I
but
don't know anything about him.
I think the other two are very very pick 'em. I would pick the Chiefs because they should have won the last one. Obviously, he was offsides. That didn't
True.
really have any effect on the play. They had a minute left, but it's not like Bills were scoring at will. Um, but It's funny because someone had mentioned Josh Allen really should just be in 2 minute drill all the time because he's way better in 2 minute drill other than anything else.
True.
So they still could have Bill still could have won that game, but I would chalk that up to a loss because they literally were going to score if Tony wasn't a moron and was like 6 inches offsides. Um,
No,
all
I
that to
agree.
say, and I think
Lions
the Chiefs have
Bucks.
has figured some things out. But I think that's
Yes,
so. I think Chiefs are going to win. I have a feeling the Bills might actually win.
they're at home
I
too. I
do.
think that helps.
I don't know. They've lost at home. They've got whooped by the Bengals last year at home.
You know what? That's
So
true. I forgot about that.
I I think they're an enigma. It's hard to say. But with the Bucks, and I actually have no idea with them, the Bucks and the Lions, because the Bucks don't let people run, but the Lions have a really good line that can run and pass protect. I don't.
I,
The Bucks cannot defend the pass at all, so that
yeah,
might not go well with St. Brown for the Lions. But at the same in the same sense, like the Lions defense is not that great either.
I was
So
unimpressed.
I think it will very. I have no idea what will happen in that game, and anything that happens, will surprise me because
I'm only
I'm just not
tending
expecting
towards
anything.
Bucks because of the slight advantage with the defense offensive kind of matchup. I do think it helps that Jared Goff's going to be at home because he's real good in a dome. But the Rams also don't have that great of a defense, so the fact they kind of sputtered throughout that game and struggled, I see Bucks winning this game. But like you said, I would not be surprised if they don't, just because it's just such a close matchup. Same with
Yeah,
Chiefs Bills.
I think
Honestly,
I'm going Lions. I think I'll go Lions.
it
I
wouldn't
like
surprise
Baker,
me.
but I just don't know about. I don't know that he's got two good playoff games in him.
I mean that the only reason I think he might be fine is because the Lions defense isn't as good. He's got, like we talked about, those easy targets. He's got two phenomenal wide receivers. So, they have guys that are the throw it up, we need a play kind of people. Um, but I don't know enough about the Buccaneers defense as a whole to say, oh, they'll be fine against the Lions' weapons, because the Lions aren't a slouch. Their offense is pretty darn good. So, yeah, it's a total toss-up. Chiefs Bills, I think, is a toss-up because I don't think this is the same Bills team that got worked by the Bengals last year. Defensive offensive coordinator, some other guys stepping up. But the Chiefs defense is way better than what they've played against in previous playoffs. So that's going to be an interesting game, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we're just looking at how teams have played, the Chiefs have the most room for offensive improvement.
True.
Like, and they scored 26,
Right.
and they have room for improvement. So I think they turn a couple of those into touchdowns. Possibly, Josh Allen possibly gives them a short field a couple times because he likes to throw it to the other team at
Yep.
times or put it on the ground. Like, I think it could. I think it could be a blowout either way. I think it'd be close. I don't really have a like.
Chiefs are too consistent for a blowout, in my opinion. Bills are volatile enough for a blowout.
I mean, they got their asses kicked by the Raiders though, because they had the fumble and then they had the pick. Like I think if they
True.
have some of those offensive woes, it puts your defense in a position that it's not like a takeaway defense. It is a like you're gonna get a field goal and that's it, and then we'll stop you on the first three downs of your drive several times. They
That's true.
essentially always give up 17 points. Um,
Well, I want to
so
see, because I think, unfortunately for Tooney, whatever the heck his name is,
Tony,
I think
yeah,
him not
Tony,
playing, because I don't know if he played last game, him not playing actually is a huge
actually,
factor. I
I
hate to
don't.
be that guy, but
Yeah, he.
yeah, he
I
didn't
don't
play.
know.
Rasheed
Was he
Rice,
hurt?
Travis Kelsey, no, I think he's benched. I don't think they want him playing. I think it's
What?
like, oh, he's injured.
I mean, it makes sense. He literally lost in 3 games this year.
Yep.
So
Oh yeah, literally. Sitting out Saturday. Hip ankle listed as inactive. Strained hip.
I mean, it's a good reason. Get him healthy. The thing is that dude did help him in the playoffs last year.
Sure.
So, um, I think you just limit how many targets he gets. When he gets on the field, it's like, dude, you're probably getting the ball, so just let's get it.
Yeah.
You know,
Real
or get
quick.
him in the kick game or something.
Oh yeah, like we kind of did with Debo. The coordinator Mike McDonald. This is crazy to me actually. Coach high school football, coach linebackers, running backs. Ended up actually getting coach of the year. This was high school. Apparently, I don't see anything about him actually ever playing football. He graduated with a finance degree from Terry College of Business. Started with Georgia. Was a coordinator with the Ravens all the way back in 2014 as a coaching intern. Was the defensive coordinator for Michigan in 2021, and then the past 2 years has been Ravens. So it's not a bad pedigree.
Oh, did he go back? So he went to Michigan. Did he go back to the Who's the guy with the Ravens right now?
That's him. He went back to.
Oh.
He went like Georgia, Ravens, Michigan, back to Ravens.
Okay. And you're saying he's still with the Ravens, or he's a Packers
Yeah,
guy?
he's second year, and well.
Oh,
probably,
yeah. See, I was meaning the Packers guy. Sorry, not
Packers?
the Ravens guy. Is it Barry?
Barry.
Something Barry?
Who the Green Bay can't stand.
Wait to get rid of. That's what
But he played well last week, so we're like, hey, he's awesome. It's like, guys, this is the Cowboys. We know Dak can't play in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Like I hate to do this, but it's a known quantity. It's not the first time. He's bad in the playoffs. It is what it is. You know now. But I think we're at an hour and a half, so I'm fine waiting on Rest versus Rust because we're gonna find out real quick.
Yeah.
We're gonna know. Next Tuesday, we're going to know how both teams... I think they're going to be fine. And the only reason I say that is it's not also their first playoffs. Now, for the Niners, this is like the first time they've been a 1 seed and had the week off. But we actually blew the doors off of Jacksonville out of a bye week. And I think the reason why I'm not worried is we're not also a rookie team. We're a veteran team who love rest. So I'm not as worried about that.
Yeah, I think we have too many important
guys.
I think we have too many important guys, like a Trent Williams, that needs that time.
Agreed.
To make sure he's right, and we're so physical. As long as they got a good week of practice this week where they were getting used to hitting each other again and like just hitting pads, then I think they'll be okay. But the defense has to come out strong. That's really it. I think the offense will figure it out against them. And then with the Ravens, the thing with them is I don't know that they have. I think every injury they had was like season ending. So
Really?
You know, well, because the running backs that got hurt, they had like all these people that were getting hurt. A few of them were like season ending.
So you're not even getting anybody back. That sucks.
Right. Now maybe some guy. I'm sure there are guys that really could use the week off. You know, Lamar and whatnot gets hit enough. But yeah, I think as long as your coach. I think if your coach is good off a bye, then you're fine. Meaning like the regular season bye. I think because we knew right away we were playing the 7 seed, they could get right on film.
True.
Right? That they could get on it right away. Which they probably were already looking at the different options anyway. They wouldn't really have to watch the Rams because we know the Rams. They would just have to watch the game because we know them.
Know them by like
it was going to be the Bucks who we already played, so they would have some form of a idea, and then it would be the Packers.
Right.
So they kind of had a leg up in that sense because as a 6 or 7 seed, you're not looking at the next game.
Right.
So
now, you said you can't do next Tuesday, right?
Maybe.
Well,
so I coach in the afternoon.
Okay.
So it makes it kind of funky to do, like, I just don't get, obviously we're doing this, so I don't get some of the other stuff done when so I'll just have to
move it.
I'll let you know.
If we need to move it, whatever. I work from home. It's not, I'm easy. But we'll probably obviously I moved it because we had so much. There's what's cool is there's so much good stuff to talk about, and you have one that I want to get into sooner rather than later because it is that famous Tony Dungy Gruden situation, right? One guy had a ton of talent, the next guy, quote unquote, got it across the finish line, or coach inherits a dumpster fire and does really well. Like it's a really interesting discussion. And I'm actually, in a weird way, kind of glad we're waiting on MVP because we're going to find out who is obviously going to get the award, and that I think will kind of shape the discussion. Because it is a really weird narrative. Which games were on primetime TV? Did you play well in those games? How many times did you play well against good teams? Did you put up the stats? Like, it's such a weird kind of discussion that I think it'd be fun to talk about. Especially because, for me, I do think who you play, kind of like college, matters. Like, if you're racking up points on the Giants, I don't think it's that impressive because the Giants are terrible. But if you're racking up points on teams like the Niners, the Ravens, stuff like that, okay, that's pretty impressive to me. Or to your point, Mahomes probably is the MVP if his receivers catch the ball. So do we factor that in? Should he get votes just for the fact he is clearly the MVP of his team?
He probably has 3 less picks and like 6 more touchdowns. And you're like, wow, that looks, it's 30-something touchdowns and completion percentage is higher. Yeah.
Right.
It sucks.
Or Josh Allen not starting 6-6. Because he actually finished the year pretty strong, but the early start killed him.
Right.
How much should we factor that in?
Well, if he played well in those last 2 games, he would probably have a good case.
Fair.
But he didn't have the stats in those last 2 games to actually he did it. If those 2 games were the beginning of the year and then you swap some games as far as him playing well, it would have been an Aaron Rodgers situation when he snagged it from Mahomes because his last 3 games were awesome.
Right.
When it's like, wait, they have the exact same stats, but his last 3 games are awesome. So who gives a crap about the last 3 games?
Well, and Purdy he had the 3-game losing streak. And I'm not going to say he played well against the Ravens. Obviously, he didn't. But also, that was a very bizarre game. It's one I still don't know how to evaluate because, you talked about the quarterback really doing a great job on the throw. Okay, does he pause because he has the guy coming around behind him? There's all kinds of that weirdness of, reevaluating these games. But how much should 1 in 17 games matter? That's an interesting discussion, too, because in fairness, it's 4 picks. It's still 4. They still count.
I don't think any of the MVPs threw 4 picks in a game. Like MVP.
Right.
Like
Dak had 3.
Now, right.
But it was against us,
I think he's had 3 a couple times, but maybe he hasn't. Maybe he hasn't then. No, it would have just been against. But anyway, it's almost like for music or movies. Like if your movie or album comes out later in the year or closer to the time of the thing, you get more credits. Like that January movie was awesome. Like why are we so dumb to think that those games don't matter? Obviously, you're a vastly different team from the beginning of the year. But like if Jalen Hurts played well this whole year and they still had this skid, they would say they didn't lose the game or say that game hasn't happened, he would be an MVP conversation.
Right.
Because he's played. It's like, I don't know. I guess it should matter a little bit because you should be getting better as the year goes on. But I don't know. At the same time, it's a regular season, not like how did we improve award. What are your stats? It is what is your record. It is like who did you do it against.
Think about this. Even if Purdy had an average game, what would we be talking about for the Ravens-Niners game? Lamar tripping over a ref in the end zone. That would be an embarrassing moment. And that's not fair to him. It was a weird play. The whole game was weird. It felt like a preseason game. So
you know what it was, unfortunately, is whether it's Shanahan being too predictable, which was probably true, but Purdy was also predictable within what they were running. So, because you don't just get 4 picks or 4 deflections to picks by happenstance. Like the Ravens were ready for it.
Yes,
and
completely agree.
We were not, and it was Purdy. It was almost like Purdy was trying to just do what he normally does in a good way, instead of like. No, like I need to be very precise. You know how when you play a better team, you're like more locked in. I don't know if he was more locked in, and I'm not saying that's a discredit to him.
Mhm.
I think he was just this is just another game, and it's like now when the Super Bowl hits, don't be more nervous, but you need to be laser focused.
Well, and
And I don't know if he stepped up to that level, and certainly Shanahan did not with his
well, let's think about it.
bizarre calling.
Lamar is 16-1 against NFC teams. So
Maybe 17-1.
I think it is. They are impossible to prepare for because you never play him. You don't have another quarterback in the entire NFC who's like Lamar.
Well, I mean, we had Trey Lance who could have given you something for a
True.
scout team,
We
but
gave him away for peanuts, which is I got why we did it. I totally understand, but to your point, it would have been nice. We also a pet peeve, and I don't want to go too long because we're gonna dive deep into this. Is Ravens did not get enough credit. All we talked about was Purdy. They made those plays. Like you said, they were ready, they were prepared, they very clearly had a game plan. Now we were moving the ball. So obviously those turnovers matter and don't matter, you know what I mean? But we do this. It's like, oh, Purdy lost his chance. Good defenses, like people forget Steve Young, Joe Montana, Brady, all have had garbage games against good defenses because they're a good defense. Let's also give credit to the defense for they get paid too. They executed their game plan.
we probably need to put on the docket of like, and maybe it doesn't need to be a long rant, but quarterback versus quarterback. They'll be like, oh, Jalen or Dak beat Jalen, or it's like, in his first game, Purdy beat the GOAT. Last I checked, our defense smashed Tom Brady.
Correct.
Purdy played well. Tom Brady was out playing cornerback. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
that is a weird one for me.
There's an intimidation, but it's not basketball.
No.
I can go right at you in basketball. There's a little bit of back and forth, like, Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes or Tom Brady, like, they can go down and score. But at the end of the day, you got to worry about the middle linebacker and the safety, not Tom Brady he's looking at his plays on the sideline. So I think it's a weird thing that's done that honestly annoys me, and maybe we do a little bit of that. But,
well, you know what annoys me about that too? Is no one talks about the fact that, Purdy's 0-3 against the AFC North. Shanahan's 1-10 against the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not Purdy. Maybe there's some coaching issues that the matchup is bad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why and I get it. You need talking points. You need the things you can rant on. You need your hot takes. I got it. It's why I can't really watch a lot of national media stuff because it's annoying to me. There's no nuance. There's no, well-rounded. And I get it. You also don't want everybody just agreeing. So I get some people take the stance because they're like, well, otherwise all of us are saying the same thing. But then you go too far either one way or the other where, Purdy's it's a paint-by-numbers offense. It's just Shanahan. Well, when he plays well and breaks a franchise record, you aren't going to give him credit. But when he plays poorly, it's his fault. Okay, well, which is it? Now, does he need blame for playing poorly? Unequivocally. But what was the game plan? Who got hurt? What did they adapt? All of these other things need to be talked about so you can actually do a reasonable analysis of actually what happened. Otherwise, you're just not really giving us good analysis, which is, I thought, their job. So that's a pet peeve of mine.
When you said it, like, there's so many greats that have had bad games, and sometimes it's a bit against bad teams.
Yeah,
it's kind of nuts. But I think there needs to be a little bit more of he struggled against, and I should, because again, I've been probably more on the critical side of Purdy because it's hard as a 7th-round pick. You need to show me a little bit more.
When he's really hard to evaluate.
It's hard to sink my whole life savings of a franchise into a guy that you're still maybe not totally sure about because there's been some wacky stuff, but he did play the Browns, who are an awesome defense. Again, they were at home. Some pieces missing. So it's like, when did your bad games happen? Dak had a bad game against the Niners. Well, we're a great defense.
Yep.
So, do I discredit him? Not nearly as much, right?
No, agreed.
If Purdy really struggled against the Bucs, who have a horrible pass defense, no, it would be all on him because we can't run the ball against them.
Sure.
All that to say, their pass defense is atrocious. So, when you play them, you should light them up. When you play this team, maybe you're not going to do as well. There should almost be like, and maybe they do this within sports betting, but they do the average like yards that you should get or touchdowns, kind of what should look like based on all these other quarterbacks and whether or not you exceed or based on your home or away, weather, playoff implication by the week, like full on algorithm. I'm sure someone has done it or will be doing it to really give perspective of like, yeah, 220 yards in that situation that's a good game.
I agree. No, I completely agree, and we're absolutely going to get into it, and that's why, partially as a joke, I put football philosophy kind of as our, thumbnail, which you still need to send me a funny picture because I told you what the background's going to be, right?
I forgot.
David and God with fingers.
Oh, right.
It's gonna be funny. But
so which way am I looking? Am I looking up? Are you God and I'm David?
who do you want
You
to
are
be?
bigger than me.
Which?
I don't.
Which? Oh, never mind. I was gonna make a joke, but that's for off camera. Um, but we'll get into it because we both like philosophy in terms of football. I didn't used to as much. But you start to fall. If you start watching film, it gets really addictive because you start to see things you've never seen before. So that's kind of what he and Rob and I enjoy, and I think will be a lot of what we discuss because it's really what gets us interested. But we're at hour 45 minutes. We could go on
Not surprising.
What was it? Christmas? We went for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we're trying to avoid that. That's why we're kind of doing this. But there's so much to talk about. There's so many different places we can go. If I don't stop us now, we're going to be here till probably tomorrow. So,
Well, he's waking up. So Peyton.
oh, good. Our alarm clock went off.
Yeah. I turned the sound off though, so it doesn't make his appearance.
But next week, obviously, we're going to react to divisional round. We're going to talk. Do you know when MVP actually gets awarded? I'll have to look that up.
I should be better at that, but nope.
No. I don't know. I don't know
think
most
it
of these
is
things.
this week, or maybe it's before their championship week, or
Who
before
freaking
the
knows?
conference championship.
Well, and I'm sure if Dak wins it,
I
there's
don't
going to be this huge outcry. It's like he had a good season.
Dak's not gonna win it.
No, I know Lamar's probably going to win it, and he
It's
should.
it's Lamar. To me,
I'm
it's
just meaning
Lamar.
like
Purdy.
I hate when we look at the playoffs and go, "Well, he shouldn't have gotten it." It's like, okay, it is a regular season award. It is what it is. But we're gonna obviously. I'd love to talk about because we just talked about a little bit QB versus QB. How much do we value QB wins as a whole versus who they played, and should we factor in you playing another quarterback? Because to your point, they don't actually play each other. They're never on the field at the same time. I'd love to get into, and this will be interesting after next week, especially with these rookies playing well. Like how much is them? How much is their offensive coordinator? So that's kind of be the game plan for next week, and I think that'll be fun. And literally was in the show notes for this week. We just had so much we couldn't get to it, which is sweet. So honestly, I think on the baby waking up note, we're going to call it. We'll be here either next Tuesday, next Wednesday, some point. If we have to wait a week, whatever. It is what it is.
Are we able to do the 3 people yet?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I'll join you guys on Friday.
And you know what I need to figure out? I think I know this is again a little what they call that behind baseball or whatever the expression is I think because I'm using it's called a collab cam for Streamlabs. I'm using it on this scene and the scene where I show my screen. I think it's causing it to break. So I'll have to figure that out, maybe do some Googling. But yeah, or like we said, we might have Rob just join us on Friday and just do the 3 of us. So either way,
that might be it.
That might be the game plan. And it might not be a bad idea with the playoffs. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll be here. I'm sure we'll find time to talk. Anyway, that's going to be it for us. Hope everybody has a good week. Hopefully your team is still in the playoffs. If they didn't lose, feel free to yell at people on Twitter like everybody else is doing. That seems to be the way to cope. All right. Have a good one, everybody. See you
guys.
maybe next week.